Hello! Joni Rotten here. I study human behavior. I want to know why we do the things we do. Today, we're going to look at being watched. Before we get there, we're going to watch this little video for a second.
Stress is an adaptive response to the environment, so when you're in a threatening situation, that you respond appropriately. Think of the typical fight or flight response. In modern times, the daily stressors that we're under at work, at school, are taking a toll, and we're continuously responding. This is no longer an appropriate response to a threatening situation. Exposure to prolonged stress can trigger or worsen illnesses ranging from the common cold to cancer.
So now that we have a little bit of an understanding about stress, let's move on. Amnesty International. 5 reasons we should all be concerned about government surveillance. Log off, Mr. Obama. Hashtag unfollow me. Today, Amnesty International launched hashtag unfollow me, a campaign demanding an end to mass surveillance. And we released the results of a global poll of more than 13,000 people across every continent. What'd we find? More than 70% of respondents worldwide are strongly opposed to the U.S. government monitoring their internet use. And in the United States, less than a quarter of U.S. citizens approved their government spying on them. Really? Now is the defining moment for the future of human rights online. The right to privacy is being systematically violated by governments that are increasingly employing sophisticated new mass surveillance technologies to spy on people's private communications. We know you have questions about why it matters. Here are our answers. 1. I'm not doing anything wrong, so why should I care? Would you care if the government installed voice recorders and cameras in your home, recording every conversation you have with a friend over a coffee, or followed you wherever you go? Those actions are the physical world equivalent of online mass surveillance. Isn't the better question, I'm not doing anything wrong, so why should they care? If our privacy is taken away without a reasonable suspicion of criminal activity, then the assumption is that everyone is potentially guilty until proven innocent. In the wrong hands, private data can be used to target journalists. Yep, we are doing that. Persecute activists, of course, and crack down on free speech. Well, oppressive governments will use surveillance to control opposition. If you don't think this can happen where you live, remember that all it takes is a change of government. And then we're going to move on to the next tab. The weapon of fear. How they use fear to manipulate you. This comes from the Unbound Spirit website.com. I don't know who said it better, Aristotle or Yoda. But here's Aristotle's take. He who has overcome his fears will truly be free. Since the moment we were born, society has imposed on us what to do, what to think, and what to feel. And it has conditioned us to believe that if we don't follow its rules, we're bound to get into serious trouble. Parents taught us to behave in certain ways. If we did, they would reward us. And if we didn't, they would punish us. Naturally, every child obeys its parents because the child is dependent on the parents. It is a matter of survival, especially in the very early years. At school, we were taught to think certain ways. They taught us what to think, but not how to develop our thinking, and everyone was taught the same. If we thought in different ways than our classmates, teachers would tell us we are bad students. They would give us bad grades and might even expel us from school. Therefore, as students, we learn to compromise our thinking so we can get away with trouble. Religion taught us to follow anything but our inner voices. Scriptures, priests, God, it taught us to have faith in others, but not to have faith in ourselves. Religion taught us that if we did certain things, we would be rewarded with bliss in heaven, and if we didn't, we would be punished in hellfire. And who is in his right mind would desire to be punished in hell? And who wouldn't want to experience heaven? Not surprisingly, we held religion in dear faith. Parents, school, and religion used one and the same thing to make us do what they wanted us to do. Fear. If you want to manipulate anybody, make him or her afraid. Once afraid, he or she will be ready to accept your offered suggestions. This tactic is being continuously used in our everyday life, but we are unaware of it. Have a clear look around you and you will see what I mean. Politicians are being elected by persuading the masses through the use of fear. Companies are selling their products by manipulating consumers' insecurities and advertising. You don't want to look old, do you? Journalists influence public opinion by terrorizing people's minds. And these are just a few examples. Fear is the best weapon of all great manipulators. Fear is the best weapon of all great manipulators. One more time. Fear is the best weapon of all great manipulators. It can move people to do anything, no matter how nonsensical it is. And this quote by Bertrand Russell says, "Neither a man, nor a crowd, nor a nation can be trusted to act humanely or to think sanely under the influence of a great fear." Wow. What about China? They're in the news a lot. China's surveillance tech is spreading globally, raising concerns about Beijing's influence. We all sit around in the Western civilized world and we think, wow, China, we don't want that here. We don't want that here. And yet we're opening our homes and doors and cell phones and computers and children up to these very things that they're doing to their people. China's push to export its surveillance technology via some of its biggest companies, including to liberal democracies, has raised concerns because of the risk of data being siphoned back to Beijing and the growing influence of the Communist Party, experts told CNBC. They have built a vast surveillance state, comprised of millions of cameras, powered by facial recognition software. The devices perched on lampposts and outside buildings and streets are able to recognize individuals. I even saw they're now working on technology for the way you walk. You can't hide your face, and so forth and so on, these smart cities. I want to read the two large, bold type quotes from this article, and then you may look it up yourself if you want to read more. I think we don't even quite understand the full scale of the problem that we are dealing with when it comes to Chinese surveillance technology when it is exported. They're becoming masters of this, and then they're selling it to other countries. I think the worst future could be these governments adopting these technologies and adding that arsenal to the existing ones for, what does it say? The control of people. Privacy is a human right. It cannot be bought or sold. Just remember that. I want to look here at school-aged children and fear for a minute. This is from senderspediatric.com. I just Googled. This is the article that I found had what I was interested in sharing. The developmental fears of 6 to 12-year-olds. I believe, in what I study, human behavior, children behavior, I believe that the human species, acts as an epic of species the same way as a human being acts in an individual development. Therefore, according to the timeline of history, human beings are acting like school-age children. So therefore, I believe that anytime I can put these two together and clearly state there's a connection, I get excited. Developmental fears. Piaget notes that the thought processes of a 6 to 12-year-olds are dominated by a system of rules, logical explanations, and regularities in events. Let me read that again. 6 to 12-year-olds are dominated by a system of rules, logical explanations, and regularities in events. Although the monsters disappeared, the nightmares remain. Now, fears are of remote events rather than something that recently occurred. Children at this age fear failure and rejection. And that is exactly what I see in society these days. We don't want to be rejected, and we don't want to fail. And the thing about these, the monsters disappearing, when we were young children, we thought they were there. We realized they weren't. We still had the nightmares. And at some point, we start to see that the monsters aren't the scary things in the dark. They're the person standing right next to you. That's where we're going to go next. Right here, I just put in YouTube CCTV, and you can get dozens and thousands and hundreds and all kinds of videos. Every kind of CCTV, weird things caught on TV, creepy things caught on CCTV, accidents caught on CCTV, ghosts caught on CCTV. I mean, we have so many cameras that this is all we're seeing. Hotels, everything, right? And not only that, people are hacking into these things. So now you have no privacy anymore. Your privacy is everywhere. It's out there for all to see. Anyone who wants to hack in or works as a security guard and is watching, their security footage, and they pull out their phone, they can videotape you, whatever. That makes me think of this. Do you ever feel like you're being watched? Some of us were observed too intently, too consistently when we were young.
Put these shoes on, Yaya. Happy Match Day, Happy Match Day, Happy Match Day. No, don't put don't.
You want them off?
No, I want them on, but I don't want the other one. Just one that's fun.
Oh, okay, that's what I was doing. Okay. All right. Here we go. I'm so sorry. I would restart this, but this is already like my 5th take. And so forget it. It's very hard to do when she's here. She just runs in. I got to put a shoe on. Polly Pocket. All right. Some Christmas presents. Throughout the day and night, do you get a sense that you're being spied upon, scrutinized, surveilled by eyes you can or cannot see? Do you feel that your every move is monitored, as are those of catwalk models, actors, captives, slaves, and prey? That all-devouring gaze waiting for what? Do you feel watched while facing challenges, giving recitals, taking tests, but also under ostensibly casual conditions, eating, reading, dressing, driving? Do you feel observed in public, as if every sidewalk was a stage? Also in private, even in your most intimate moments, as if walls had eyes. Can't help but think of this. Walls have eyes. In 1906, Psychiatric Journal first used the term scopophobia to describe a morbid shamefacedness and a morbid dread of being seen. It's the fear of being watched or the fear of watching. Okay? Okay, expand the fear of being seen by those who We see seeing us to include the ever more irrational fear that we are always being seen everywhere, even when we are alone. So clearly, we are making this happen to us. We're doing this to ourselves. We're afraid of it. Some of us, this fear results of having been watched too much, too intently when we were very young. Well, we're acting like school children right now. We are school children right now. We are young and we are being watched intently too much. It wasn't just the plain weirdness of being watched, but why our watchers watched us. They made us believe that unwatched, we would shame ourselves, shame them, blunder, or die. They said that the second we slipped out of sight, we would wet our pants and have seizures, shoplift. They said that they could see through walls and straight into our minds. They watched us while we bathed and slept and sleep. Somehow, we fortified our right to privacy. Hold still. Have you gained weight? Is that a pimple or a deadly parasite? Sometimes they watched us by themselves. Sometimes they put us on display. Then we go down here a little bit. Let's see. But wait, we are not silly weirdos, but survivors of surveillance. Our watchers were home invasion robbers who entered our premises and stole our privacy, turning innocent observation, hello there, into trauma. Peekaboo became PTSD. Yep. And this right here got me. These are videos, a compilation of people walking into things while texting. I'm going to go back to this because here we go. Do you see this? They made us believe that unwatched, we would shame ourselves, shame them, blunder, or die, or walk into things whilst texting. Oh, we did it anyway. Right? That just made me giggle. That we would somehow then steal. That was also very strange. That surveillance of making sure people don't commit crimes. Here's an interesting video I found. A hacked CCTV in a classroom. That's right, in a classroom. Your kids at school, they can hack into the CCTVs. Now, I understand that, surveillance is coming a long way, and we're working on making it illegal to hack, but this was only, a couple of years ago, and it happens anyway. It happens even today. So this was interesting because they're playing music in a classroom, right? Inappropriate music in a classroom, but here's what got me. Look at the amount of time this hacker spent just harassing a classroom. So harassing a classroom. Get this. Harassing a classroom for how long? How long? No, there's the teacher. Somebody's finally figuring it out. I don't know, this looks like the janitor. Look at that. All day, 15 minutes. Goes on for almost 20 minutes before the tape clicks out or the video ends. 20 minutes they watched. This classroom. Just watched and harassed. Kids feeling unsafe in their own school. I can't even be here without being watched by strangers. Not only are my teachers watching me and the camera's watching me, but now I have complete strangers watching me and uploading it onto YouTube. Wow. Then we have here's another one I found interesting. Here's a baby's crib, a baby's room. Doesn't even matter what they do. But look how long they just watch this baby's room. Look at the amount of time they watched that baby's room. 28 and a half minutes. 28 and a half minutes. Imagine how long somebody who's hacked in. The only reason you would know they've hacked is if they tell you they've hacked. So they play a song or scare your kid or talk to you. The fact is they can sit there and not say anything. That's really scary. So I thought this was interesting too when I was looking about being watched and the phobia that goes along with this. Drones. Are drones spying on you? Drones can be an amazingly, really cool thing to see what it can videotape from up there. I mean, it gives you a bird's eye view, literally. But people are going to, of course, corrupt it. That's what we do. That's what human beings do. Okay? So this was interesting. I liked what this particular guy had to say.
I think that's future, but in the same time, it's kind of scary, to be honest. When it comes to like not only security, but privacy and stuff. I'm not really sure about it, to be honest.
How do you walk that fine line of trying to keep people safe but not invading their privacy? I guess that's where the issue is.
I think that's the issue with internet and with social media and with everything, with privacy, So drones are just another part of the bigger problem, I think.
He didn't even really know what to think about it. And that's where I think we're all at. It's happened so fast at us. And it is so entertaining. And so, just like kids, we don't recognize how harmful it is. And need I remind you, the weapon of fear. They use it to manipulate you. You're being programmed. They're manipulating you. You don't know how scary it is for human beings to be watched? Look at all these movies that have scenes or are about being watched, being spied on, secrets, right? Wow, we're afraid of this. We are afraid of being watched. So much so, we make movies about it. From American Pie to Halloween, okay? To Minority Report, to Enemy of the State, to Jason Bourne movies, right? These are all movies about, Peeping Tom, even. Those are 1960 movies. We have always been afraid of being watched. We know that because we're putting it in our films, and yet here we are. This video really, really was cool to me. And, oh my, what have I done? I don't even know. Oh, there we go. This guy, I might save it for the end, and play it at the end so that if you want to watch it. It's so fascinating. It's about 11 minutes long. But I watched it on my big TV and then I pulled it over here. But I'm going to save it. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to pop it at the end. I'm almost done. Security camera. So this was one of those things where you want to know about the fear of being watched. I found this video really interesting. Security Camera Trolling 3 and Black Ops 2. It's a video game for adults, kids, I guess. I don't play video games. I actually have no idea what Black Ops is. It just looks like a kind of army game. Anyway, doesn't matter. My point is that here's a guy, so I can set it up. He is trolling this game. When he is playing, you see his gun. When the other player sees him, he looks like a camera. He's telling them that if they don't run away from the camera or they don't kill themselves, then, camera's going to steal all of their maps and then they'll lose. And this particular one, this little boy really gets a little freaked out. And it's cute. He does apologize. But at the same time, What I found the most interesting is that this is a video game. It's a game. The kid knows it's a game. The other places, it's not just a kid. He's done this to adults too. He has several videos. They're kind of cute to watch. But these people are playing a game. They know it is a game. And yet when they see this camera, they flip the fuck out. And so here is a couple little minutes of that.
Real though, I don't know any of you guys, but have you heard of the cameras that they put in this game? The like little security cameras that like follow people around?
They ain't putting no damn cameras in this game, motherfucker. You just turn black all of a sudden? What the fuck is that?
Guys, for real, they put little security cameras in this game to follow boosters around, and they take their maps and stuff.
Yeah, hold on, I'm going through my contacts right now. Let me call bullshit.
You guys haven't seen the cameras at all?
I ain't no fucking cameras, dude.
I can't lose studio.
Sure.
You can't lose studio?
No, I can't.
Sure, double jump.
Well, you better be careful then, dude. Because I've seen so many cameras.
What happens? Wait, how did they take it from you?
I don't know. I guess they just follow you around, and if you see them following you, you have to kill it. You have to kill yourself. Why don't you guys believe me about these cameras?
Because it's a freaking 3-year-old game. They're not gonna have no fucking cameras following you around, taking your DLC, raping your women.
They've been spending years on Black Ops 3. They don't give a fuck about videos.
But seriously though, you guys need to like watch out. If you see the cameras, you gotta run.
Yeah, I'm looking at the ground. I'm looking at the ground all over the fucking place. I don't see no damn cameras, so yeah. There's not.
Yo, I don't see shit either, man. I hate to tell you that, but I'm gay.
All right, Jerome, do it now. Do it now.
Whoa, 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 whoa! Yo, my nigga, there really is a fucking camera.
Dude, it kicked him from the game.
Oh my god!
Yeah, I'm still skeptical as fuck. I doubt there's any cameras in this fucking.
I hope it didn't take his DLC. All right, B, do it now. Do it now.
I'm looking at the ground all over the fucking stairs.
It kicked
Oh
B
my god! He kicked B!
too. Dude, Coneways, did you see that?
Did he take his DLCs?
I don't know.
I don't know, dude.
Wait! What the fuck is that? Ah!
Oh my god! It got him too. Holy shit, bro. You better hide in a corner. One of us is next.
No.
Are you okay?
Intense music.
Yeah, I'm just scared.
There's
No,
nothing on the ground
studio.
next to you, is there?
No. I don't see it. What does it look like?
I don't know. I'm hiding in the corner.
Can I hide with you? Where are you?
I keep moving because I see it.
You see it?
Yeah, where are you
I
at?
don't know. I'm just like, I'm by the spot area. No, I died. I'm like in the middle. Hey, where are you? I don't know where you are.
I just keep looking at the ground to make sure he's not following me.
Ah! There's a camera! There's a camera!
Dude, don't let it touch you.
Dude, there's a camera!
Did you really see it?
No, I see it! I see it! Where is it? No, I see it!
You see the camera there. It's there it is. But then it'll show you the player's view or the guy that's actually the playing, and he's a person, so the kid sees the camera, not. Anyway, I thought that was cute because he runs from this camera.
I see it!
It's
Don't
coming
let it touch you,
after him.
dude.
No! I'm not shooting!
And you can hear in his voice the fear that's there. And he knows this is a game. He doesn't want to lose those maps. He's worked so hard. Then I came across this. 21st century could be the age of paranoia, warns leading scientists. The interesting thing about this was that published in 2008. Paranoia is on the increase and could go unchecked unless we take urgent action, claims a leading scientist. Dr. Daniel Freeman, a Wellcome Trust Fellows, warns that changes in how we live and work could mean that we are entering an age of paranoia. I 100% believe that he was on target over a decade ago. These days, we daren't let our children play outside. We're suspicious of strangers. Security cameras are everywhere. We seem to have entered an age of paranoia, and the indications that things may only get worse. And for the first time ever, 2008 has seen the urban population of the world outnumbered outnumbered the rural. In 1800, only 5% of people lived in urban areas, but this figure is set to rise to 65% by 7030. We're only 10 years away. This does not bode well for our mental health. Scientists have known for some time that rates of paranoia are twice as high in cities compared to rural areas. Social bonds are much looser in cities than in smaller. Rural communities where ready-made, relatively stable support networks exist. Social isolation, a frequent drawback to urban life, is closely associated with paranoid thoughts. In the UK, nearly 4 times as many people live alone than 50 years ago. Increasing paranoia is certainly one of the more challenging posed by galloping urbanization. Paranoia isn't confined to Western nations, but it does appear that societies in which people are divided by huge differences in income and where the emphasis is on individual economic success run the risk of breeding conflict, unhappiness, and distrust, argues Dr. Freeman. An increasingly flexible employment market with more reliance on short-term contracts breeds uncertainty, stress, and fuels competitions in the workforce or workplace, encouraging us to see our colleagues as rivals and potential threats. Paranoia. Every age has its boogeyman, and ours includes terrorists, hoodies, pedophilias, and amount of coverage they receive in both tabloid and broadsheets greatly outweighs coverage of our real killers, such as heart disease, cancer, and road accidents. So what we are doing is we're turning ourselves into a stressed mess. This was 2008, the age of paranoia. We were warned, and look what we're doing. Paranoid personality disorder. This was of this year. Sorry, last year.
I'm pretending to be a baby.
Okay. People with paranoid personality disorder are generally characterized by having a long-standing pattern of pervasive distrust and suspiciousness of others. Down here, individuals, oops, I did do it right. A person with paranoid personality disorder will nearly always believe that other people's motives are suspect or even malevolent. And it's interesting because this is what I think. I think everyone is just selfish. I think given the right circumstances, anyone and everyone will turn against you. I know that personally. So I can say that I believe that we're hitting a scary time of everything that's going on in the world. This is something we don't need, and yet we're inviting it and we're using it to say we're going to have nanny cams and watch our babies and our classrooms and our our dogs at the doggy daycare. And people are hacking them. They're taking advantage of us. It's a way of controlling you. You're being controlled. Plain and simple. We are being controlled. And with that, I'll leave it with this. I liked this. If you're into video games, this is interesting anyway, but really forget the video game aspect of this. Listen to what he's saying. This is powerful. The power of being watched. The psych of play. This is by Daryl Talks Games on YouTube. Check it out. And then when it's done playing, I'll end the video. Have a good New Year's, and I hope you learned something new. Bye.
If I told you that you were being watched, that right behind you there was someone or something watching your every move, you might feel a little uneasy. You might call my bluff and just ignore the thought. I couldn't possibly know if you were being watched or not. Right? By now, you might have turned around to check, or at least are resisting the urge to. That uncertainty as to whether or not you are being observed is unsettling, but not scary per se. You haven't confirmed or denied the presence of anyone watching you, but the possibility that there could be is not something our minds like to deal with. And it's that ambiguity that video games can employ to make a level, a moment, or an enemy deeply troubling. I am Daryl, and this is Psych of Play. Some of the weirdest and most interesting enemies in video games have one or more big, abnormal eyeballs. Goma in Zelda, Andross in Star Fox, Necromorphs, Fatal Frame ghosts, the list goes on. Disembodied, disproportionate, and discolored eyes are a staple for any level or enemy that is designed to be freaky. Giant, flashy eyes in video games are weird, and they make for good targets when you need an obvious weak spot. But what exactly makes an eye creepy? Earlier I mentioned that the uncertainty of whether or not something is watching you makes you feel uneasy. But in video games, when you see an eyeball, typically it's looking right at you. So there's no question of if you're being watched, but rather what exactly is watching you, and why. These questions tap into a deep-rooted survival instinct. Eyes are used for vision, of course, but they are also used as a form of communication. If the intention of a gaze is not clear, it can be mistaken as a threat. If you and I are friends and we are at lunch with a group of coworkers, and I make a casual joke about your favorite movie whilst smiling at you, you know that I'm simply poking fun at you. But if I sat in silence, with no smile, no speech, and we were not friends or even acquaintances, me staring at you might make you feel a little anxious. So I think what makes eyes so creepy in games is that they are presented without any additional social context. When an eye is disembodied, the only information you can get from it is where it's looking. Often you don't know whose eye it is or why it's looking at you. Is it staring at me because I look tasty? Is it judging me? Is it scared of me? Is it laughing at me? That uncertainty or vagueness is what makes it so skin-crawling. The gaze doesn't even need to be on the player to trigger this ambiguity. Picture this. You are sitting in the back of a large theater waiting for a play to start. 300 people around you are all talking amongst themselves while you play on your phone. You begin to realize that it's growing oddly quiet. You look up to the stage to see what's going on, only to realize that the entire audience is turned around looking directly behind you. What do? Well, other than shit your pants, you'd probably turn around as fast as you could to see what you were missing. This is a phenomena observed a lot in social psychology called informational influence. The group we are in has given us reason to believe that there is vital information that we are out of the loop on. In this case, that something is behind us. And until we see what that is, this makes us very nervous. One of the best in-game examples of this is in Celeste's Mirror Temple. Eyes are riddled throughout the stage, and they look in random indeterminate spots or follow Theo. But here, Madeline will illuminate two large statues that are both looking up into a vast pitch-black void, where you must go next. When I arrived at this moment during my first playthrough, I was beyond apprehensive. What are these things looking at? What could be so bad that the creepy statues would ignore me, the intruder, and look at something else? If they're scared, then I should be terrified. Not knowing what was there was unsettling, and knowing that they could see it, but I couldn't, was dreadful. Disembodied eyes that gaze at you or something you can't see, or even the feeling that eyes are watching you, are all vague situations. You aren't exactly sure if you should be scared or not. There's not enough information for your mind to decide. When the flow of clear communication from another face is reduced to a simple gaze, the intent or reasoning behind that gaze is unclear. This is why masks tend to be a little troubling. Psychologist Claude Levi-Strauss suggested that the reason people tend to be afraid of clowns or people in masks is because the face paint or the mask itself cuts off the stream of communication from one person to another. You can't identify that person's emotions. If someone is smiling and winking at you, they probably like you, and if they're frowning and their brow is lowered, they may be angry with you. But in both cases, you at least know whether this person could be a threat or not. Isn't it odd how when you speak to someone wearing dark sunglasses, you sort of assume that they're staring directly at you, or that they're hiding something? Anything that covers or removes a portion of the face deprives us of the social information needed to understand someone's thoughts or attitudes. Masks conceal things, which is one reason why the Splicers in Fort Frolic, the Skull Kid, Pyramid Head, and the masked Matt Helms are nightmare fuel. Now, obviously, these are all threats as they try to kill you in-game, but the masks put up a wall so that you can't fully understand your pursuer.
And you always fear what you don't understand.
So, ambiguity is a huge part of what makes eyes so freaky in video games, but these same rules apply in real life. The Fear Survey Schedule 2, developed by James Gear, is often used to gauge people's most common fears. Among snakes, sharks, and nuclear war, some of the most commonly found fears using this survey is public speaking, humiliation, and social pressure. Fear does not come exclusively in the form of physical threats, but also social ones. According to a 1999 study, around 15 to 20% of the population suffers from some form of glossophobia, or fear of public speaking. Having eyes follow you or watch you as you play a level, even if those eyes aren't disembodied, can be scary for some folk. These ghastly eyes following you in Kirby's Canvas course might put you on edge, but this audience and foul play might do the same if you are someone who deals with any level of social anxiety. What if the audience doesn't like your performance? What if you're playing Smash Bros. With a group of friends and take an unmitigated loss? Not only would your friends laugh, but the in-game audience would add insult to injury by cheering the dude who just beat you. The knowledge that you could be embarrassed or judged by everyone watching could affect your performance. It could also make you shut down and play poorly. These fears of failure and disapproval can spark social inhibition, performing poorly in the presence of others. Any game that makes it clear you are being observed, whether that be by in-game entities like the audience in Guitar Hero who boo you when you mess up, or by real-life people in multiplayer, can have a huge effect on your experience. It can stifle your ability to think clearly and play smoothly. But an audience may not always trip up the player. Some may even prefer to have spectators, and thrive off the added pressure. Maybe you get a rise out of everyone's reactions to your skill. You might even play better with people around than you do alone. If so, it's likely because of social facilitation, which is the other side of the coin. To explore this, Robert Zajonc and his colleagues performed a study with cockroaches, where a single cockroach would need to find an exit from a light in a maze. In the control condition, our little friend would simply go it alone, but in the experimental condition, the roach had an audience of other cockroaches. When our six-legged friend had spectators, on average he and the other subjects made it to the exit much faster. They performed better while being observed. And that's bizarre, but true. Social facilitation is not exclusive to humans. But what separates facilitation from inhibition? In both cases there is an audience, so why do some thrive in it while others fail? To understand this and tie this whole video together, I should make it clear that the presence of others increases our overall arousal. When we are alone and reading a book, it's just us and the book, and maybe a coffee table. But if someone else is in the room with us, suddenly we'll have to be at least a little alert. People, after all, are much more unpredictable than coffee tables, so we're vigilant. Our arousal is upped. And it's what we do with that arousal that makes the difference in our performance. In a 1982 study on this, pool players that were skilled at their game typically played much better with an audience than without one. On the flip side, unskilled pool players did much worse when being watched. In both cases, the audience created a higher state of arousal in each player, and in both cases, the dominant response was elicited. Skilled players are skilled, and playing well for them is probably natural. In the same way, playing poorly is only natural for unskilled players. For all players, the presence of a peanut gallery or an audience only sped up the inevitable. So, what do we take away from all this? Well, from a development standpoint, an in-game audience can be a brilliant way to get a rise out of the player, subject to where in the game it's used. If you place one at the end, during the final boss, when the player is already very skilled at the game, like in Pokemon Colosseum, you might 1. Facilitate the player's skill and make them better during the final showdown, and 2. Get them excited to show off their hard work as they take down the last big baddie. Conversely, if you want the player to experience anxiety or social inhibition from the crowd, place it earlier in the game when the player isn't very good yet. This can add a psychological challenge to whatever other challenge your game has to offer. When you perform poorly in Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door, the spectators will punish you by throwing trash and other things at you during combat. I love the idea of an audience that will make fun of or ridicule the player for poor performance, and I love to see more games that adopt that mechanic. I think it adds a new layer to the challenge. Lastly, if you want your games to be creepy and unsettling, make situations and enemies ambiguous. Cover faces, disembody some eyes, be clever about what information you present the player and what information you withhold. Sometimes the player's own deep dark imagination and ability to fill in the blanks is greater nightmare fuel than you could ever create. Hey, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed our little